This is episode 25 of the What's a Hero podcast with me, Ken Fraunfelter. As a cop, I live for my days off. And when I finally get to my first day off, the day that I had planned to take on the world, Walmart, the gym, and that moldy stuff in the back of the fridge, I just want to disappear in between the cushions of my couch and not come out for days. But it's so rare I ever really get a day off. Between court, mandatory training, and that irresistible last-minute overtime assignment, it seems like I'm always working. Sound familiar? Man, this job can really suck the life out of you. I know you know what I'm talking about. Sure, it's part of the job, but it can wear on you, and that can lead to problems. Big problems. Problems like compassion fatigue, exhaustion, depression, withdrawal from people, the destruction of personal relationships and home life, drinking, more drinking, even suicidal thoughts or worse. We have all been affected by it. We have all seen it. We all know fellow cops who have burned out, let their personal life fall apart as they chase the job, or even worse, died by suicide because they felt they had nowhere else to turn. We don't deserve to live like that. Our families do not deserve a mere shadow of the former person we once were. We were designed for a better life, for a better quality of life. We deserve to be able to enjoy our life, our family, and our children through our law enforcement career and beyond retirement. As a cop who has been through the darkness and overcome it, I want to share some good news with you. You can survive a career in law enforcement. The key to your survival is living an actively balanced life of resilience. Like the body armor you suit up with every day, cops need armor for their bodies, minds, and hearts. In the book, 101 Health Tips for Police Officers, the author gives a real viable list of tips and advice backed by research along with experience of his own career and that of several veteran officers. The detailed and yet candid explanations make this an incredible resource for both rookie and veteran cops, or anyone involved in a profession or lifestyle that demands you to be 150% at all times. As a veteran police officer, I found many excellent tips in the pages of 101 Health Tips for Police Officers. The author's approach is great diversity and provides us with tips for physical, emotional, and spiritual survival. I have found so many things in this book to be helpful in the day-to-day of my career. These wellness strategies, in combination with my faith in God, has given me long-term resilience and a new purpose in serving others. Fellow officer, deputy, trooper, dispatcher, or professional, you are meant for more than mundane. I want to encourage you that there is hope for you and that the key to not becoming a casualty of this battle is to lead a life of resilience. I pray that you can apply at least some of the author's tips to your life and your career and live the life you were given. I will share a quote with you that always made me smile from an old cowboy who loved police officers, who has since passed away. Whenever we would part ways, he would always say, "Stay low in the saddle, keep off the ridges, and keep your powder dry. And if you can't, make sure you shoot straight. God bless you." And this was written by Jonathan E. Hickory, who was a veteran police officer, chaplain, and the author of Break Every Chain. And he's talking about, as far as the author is concerned, Mr. Scott Medlin, who has worked as a police officer since 2007. Prior to that, he was in the United States Marine Corps and attended college. He was deployed for Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003 and 2005. Once he was not dishonorably, but honorably discharged from the Marine Corps, he earned his bachelor's degree. Scott entered into law enforcement. Scott has helped fellow officers keep marriages together, pulled through during hard financial times, and overcome depression. He is also willing to share his mental health fight to teach others how to become aware and overcome. And like I said, I'm talking about the book 101 Health Tips for Police Officers. And in this book, I've kind of picked out 11 or so that are super, very poignant. And I wanted to kind of talk about them today on the podcast, but, I didn't want to do it alone. So what I did is I reached out to the author of this book, and he has so graciously agreed to come on the show. And so with us today, we have Mr. Scott Medlin. Welcome.
Thank you, Ken. I'm honored to be on the podcast, and to all those listening, whether you're in law enforcement or not. But yeah, let's get to talking about how we can stay healthy in this society, in this world.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for showing up today. And and being a part of this. And um, so where do you come from? What do you do? Who is Scott?
Well, I'm on the eastern part of the country, and well, yes, I'm from the East Coast, and I got that hunch to be a police officer, that little spark of energy, that thought whenever I was actually a little kid. I saw a man in my neighborhood who was going door to door very suspiciously. I knew he didn't live in the neighborhood, and he would go very close to the doors when he would knock on them. But then he started looking into windows, and that's what got me kind of scared when I was in the garage waiting on my mom to come to the car. I told my mom, I said, what's that man doing up there? And she looked at him, and then she called my dad. And my dad said, you need to leave, but you also need to call the police. And I'll just never forget that feeling of wanting the police there.
Right.
And that's the kind of feeling that stuck with me. But also in high school, still had no idea what I wanted to do. But I spoke to a police recruiter in the hometown where I was from, and I was sold after talking to him. So, yes, after college and the Marines, I got into law enforcement.
You just kept that spark the whole time, huh? Like
I really, yeah, I did. And the TV show Cops, it was, I mean, it was a great show, and I really enjoyed watching that show.
Right.
So it kind of helped with the decision.
Right. My big thing was chips when I was a little kid. I had very
Yes.
I had very similar thing because I grew up in Southern California, and so it's
Okay, gotcha.
same deal where you just I saw those guys and I said, oh my gosh, that's what I want to do, because I saw they were actually filming one time and they were going down the highway when I was on the freeway, and my mom's like, hey, check it out. And I was like, and so it was actually Larry Wilcox and Eric Estrada, and they apparently had filmed a scene. They were coming down the freeway past us. They stopped at the same stop sign on the off ramp. And I was back then you wore your seatbelt or you didn't, it was what it was back in the 70s.
Right. Yeah, right.
I had to be, I don't know. I was born in 76. So it was either late 70s, early 80s that I saw this. And I was just like, oh, and so I, watched that happen. And ever since then, I watched, let's see, the cops wearing, all their gear and everything like that. And so, yeah, same deal.
It's amazing to me how most police officers remember like the first time they had that thought or had that excitement about police. Right. I mean, I also won't forget any time I was at a restaurant with my family and police officers came in there. I just felt so much safer. I really did. Yeah. And I mean, nothing. I mean, heck, if I'm out with my family now and officers come in and nothing's changed. Right. So, yeah, it's just funny how everyone remembers.
Right. It always gets me that people say, well, I don't trust cops. Why? Why don't you trust cops? Do you do something that you shouldn't? It's just, right. I don't trust this person X or person Z. Why don't you trust them? Is there something about you? So I think you got to let go of your ego sometimes. And
yeah.
So you grew up? Would you grow up on the East Coast? Is that right?
Yep. Haven't left it. I'll say yes. I've always been on the eastern part of the country. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So that's awesome. And so you've always been over there, and I'm guessing you went in the military over that way. And if you're eastern side of the country, you went to Paris Island.
I did, the land that God forgot.
Bugs didn't though, right?
I went June, July, and August of 2001. I mean, what a perfect time of year to go. June, July, and August. And actually, it was kind of crazy when I got out of boot camp. I reported back in, after the 10-day leave. And my first day reporting in for combat training was 9/11/2001. Oh, so I'm getting off the bus at Camp Lejeune right as the first plane struck the Trade Center.
Holy cow.
And a Lance Corporal who welcomed us. Well, he didn't really welcome us. You know how it is. Right. He told us, he said, hey, there's a plane. And of course, all those typical emotions. Well, it must have been an accident and all that kind of stuff. But I will just never forget, all during combat training, it hit all of us like we're going somewhere at some point.
Right. Jeez, that's crazy. Yeah, I went in September, but to San Diego. So the weather stayed nice the whole time. I think it rained a couple of times, but overall it was so. So throughout your whole being a kid, you just wanted to be a cop, and you thought, I'm going to be a cop. But the best route to doing that when I get out of school is going to the military, right?
I knew I wanted to get in law enforcement, but I also believed in duty to country, service to country, and also the Marine Corps recruiter also impressed me. Also, I needed some discipline. As a teenager, I was all over the place, so I knew I needed it. The recruiter sold me on that. Yes, the Marines was tough. Yes, I went to deployments, and I thank God I survived. But it, yes, the police thing never left my heart or my mind.
That's nice. That's cool. And so you were in the Marine Corps, and was there such a sense? Obviously, like you said, it's 9/11. Was there such a sense of we need to get trained up because we're going to be needing to go do something here pretty soon on that
Oh,
day?
yes, absolutely. And I wasn't actually an active Marine. I was in the reserves, but the reserves understood something could come down the pipe at any moment to activate us.
Mm.
And yes, in 2003, it did for the
Yeah.
invasion of Iraq. So we were mobilized, and then we spent several months over there, and then came home for not even a year. I think year and a half, and then we went right back. Well, all the radio operators went right back
Yeah.
for several more months. So 03 and 05, I was in Iraq when I was in the Marines. But all through that time, I was going through college, and I made a commitment to myself. I will, when I get home, I will finish college, and then I'll follow through on becoming a police officer.
But so when you get out, you got to after serving your tours and getting your and putting your time in, was it reserved the whole time, or did you go active duty during that time? Obviously, when you
No, never went active. And when it came time to follow through with going, because I went to 6 weeks of officer candidate school through the
Mhm.
PLC program, when it came time to go back for that second 6 weeks, I had already been through 2 deployments.
Mhm.
My girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, was kind of like, "Yeah, if you get deployed again, I don't know if I can really handle this." And I
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
"Yeah, it's time to get out."
Right, right. So you get out and you say, "Well, I'm gonna do the same thing, but I should at least, I'm gonna air quote should be home every night." So,
Right. Right. Yes. And yes, from '07 to 2020, I did do it active. I'm part-time right now at a university police department, but I'm an active advocate for police officers and mental health. I've gone through my fair share of struggles because of the deployments, as well as what I've seen in policing and how I didn't handle it very well,
mhm,
and how I'd had to learn how to handle it the hard way. Therefore, I made that leap of faith to help other officers. I feel like I could do more for officers than just working on a patrol team of 6. This kind of stuff, like talking on podcasts, being on YouTube, speaking at first responders conferences, stuff like that I've been doing, has been much more profound for the sake of those who I want to help, so that they can be well and do well.
right, that's awesome. That is so cool because there's such a need for that because there's a whole, I guess, generation that was just like, oh, you suck it up, you get tough,
Yeah.
shut up if you're new, and you get over in the corner and you just learn by watching, and then we'll tell you what you need to know, and then oh, you're not feeling good, here, just suck it up and don't tell anybody how you feel, and you're a tough guy. You're supposed to be anyways, and if you're not, that
Right.
we all have to understand that that's not how it goes anymore. That's
No. No, it's definitely not. Stress. We have stress on the job, but there's now much more stress in home life too, in personal life. We are just so fast paced now
yeah.
that there's just stress, 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 stress,
Hmm.
and you just can't go through life and a stressful job, not do anything to cope with it, and expect to be okay. Especially when you're seeing stuff that the brain is not innately wired to see at all. I mean,
Right.
we wake up and our brains are like, okay, where's the food? Where's the water? Where's the people I love? And where's the fun? It doesn't say, where's the dead bodies? Where's the crashes? Where's the whatever else you can think of that's traumatic on the job? It doesn't say that. So you are having a stressful reaction when you go to these calls.
Right. So
And
when they're having the incident, the crash, or they're having that's their one incident through their life. Oh, worst case scenario, or
mhm,
watershed moment in my life. That's theirs. But you go to theirs, and then you go to the next guy's, and then you go to the
yes,
next girl's, and then you go to the next person's, and you keep going, and it's all day long. And then you got to write a report to document that, to dredge it all,
right,
and then you
right.
get go.
And when I was active, now I'm going to
You're good.
be totally transparent here. When I was at the unit, when I'm at the university, my risk of getting into a use of force situation with a student is very minimum. But when I did work in the city, unfortunately, use of force was not common, but it wasn't something that was out of. It wasn't something that was rare either.
Right.
What I got tired of was I literally would be in a fight sometimes with someone trying to control them or trying to protect myself or others,
Mhm.
And then it was like right after the incident, they're like, okay, go to the report room and knock out the report. I like, looking back, I'm like, wait a minute, can we not decompress just a little bit? It was no, get right to the report room and finish it immediately. It's just that would mess with your psyche.
Because what is a use of force? They want the report done that day so it can be looked over, and so then whether it needs to go to the DA or whatever.
Hmm.
Like, well, can I compress this one or kind of push this for a little bit? I want to get over, which is cool about like officer involved shootings. You have that opportunity to sit back and relax for a minute, not
Yeah,
relax, mind's going crazy, but you have to separate and detach from the moment, for which is, I guess, the benefit. But you get into a knockdown drag out, what happens? There's that expectation. Okay, we got to get the report done. Yes, I do have to get the report done, but I just fought for my life. Give me a couple minutes to compose myself here. And so,
absolutely.
yeah. So there is that mental fatigue. And so, not realizing that, we get into that. So you wrote this book, 101 health tips for police officers. And you're just knocking out these just, I guess, points that just say, hey, do this and this will help. This isn't going to fix you, but these are things that are going to help you. And it's not all you need to exercise every day, and you need to, the exercise and eat right and all this different stuff. There's more to it. And so there's a physical side of it, there's a mental side of it, spiritual side of it, and a social side of it that you document in this book, which is not something that I think I've seen too much of. You always hear the guy talking about each one of those maybe individually, but
Hmm.
when all four are put together, that and you're not, when you say, mention one tip later in the book, you're harking back to a tip that was in a different chapter at a different time. And so it's actually pretty cool. So what I want to do is kind of go over a couple of these, if you're good with that. And I kind of want to get the idea. And the first one is super simple, and it's one that we've been dealing with for, everybody should always know, and we always push this one, and that's exercise. And you might think 101 health tips, and you'd think that this would be the number one or whatever extra tip, but this isn't. This is deeper into chapter one, which is kind of funny. So I'm going to read it. So I tried to beat around the bush a bit, but come on, we both knew this was coming. I will make sure to dive more into the specifics later, but for now, let us just start with the idea of exercising. I could write an entire book as it relates specifically to the importance of exercise for law enforcement folks. There are so many ways to exercise. Some of the ways to exercise are wrong, and many of them are right. There is honestly no extra excuse to not commit to one or to at least a moderately challenging program. The good news is this: just 20 minutes to an hour on alternating days will be enough to maintain a healthy fitness level if you actually push yourself instead of just yakking with fellow gym goers while leaning on the equipment. Most people are well aware of the long established correlation between exercise and cardiovascular health. There is muscle tone and development, balance, and so forth, but many understate the importance of exercise for your mental health. Technically, when you work out, you are inflicting pain on yourself. It is in a controlled, healthy setting, but is still pain. Your body responds with substances called, you can help me with this one, enkephalins and endorphins. Your body's response to exercise is not like a drug, it is a drug, and it helps your attitude and mental health just as much as it helps your body. For now, I will say this: as long as you are safe, short and intense, as long as you are safe, short and intense is better than 2 hours at a tortoise's pace. Of course, you are busy. We all are. Push yourself hard enough, and you can be wrapping up the final 15 minutes of your workout as soon as you start. Just look at it that way. For example, I learned an amazing push up workout from Marine Corps retired Sergeant Major Corville during my time as a USMC officer candidate school in Quantico. The workout was simple: do 400 push ups in 20 minutes. That is 20 push ups a minute. And you start exactly on the minute. Whatever time you have left until the next minute is rest. To clarify, you do not do 20 and then rest a full minute. Join the 400 club. Disclaimer: always stretch to avoid injury and use your own good judgment when determining which exercises are best for you, not as an excuse to wuss out. So obviously that's an easy one that's one we all should know, is exercise. And it kind of gets brushed over by some officers, I would agree, correct? even on.
There was a study I read several years ago, but I don't think anything's changed, where it said 8 out of 10 officers were actually obese. I have personally seen some that cannot carry out the physical duties of the job at times. When I was working as a canine officer, there were a few times where I was running a track, running behind the dog who was sniffing out the scent of where a criminal would run off to. And I was running behind the dog, and I would look back, and I started with a backup officer, and then I would look back after a few minutes and the backup officer was gone, leaving me and my dog by herself. So yes, exercise is absolutely important. But you're right. I brought it up, that it does affect our mental well-being. It can actually be a good source for coping with trauma. It can help with to fight PTSD symptoms. It can also help to fight the greater suicide risk. It really is amazing. And what's great about it is, as I pointed out in the book, you don't have to go to the gym for an hour or two and take up that much time.
Right,
You can
right.
seriously bust out 20 minutes worth of push-ups Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever schedule you want to be on, and you can still perform the duties of the job doing those kind of short, intense workouts.
Absolutely. I agree, because there's too many people say, "Oh, well, I don't have to, I have to do this X amount of time, or I have to do this, or I just do the elliptical," and that's cool. I guess if you're doing something, if you're ellipticaling. However,
Mhm.
like you said, that tortoise pace, or the sit around and talk, at the gym with somebody else, or sitting on the end of the bench with the weight on the bench, but you're on your phone and you're going through Facebook, or you're
Yeah.
whatever you're doing, you're you're always going to notice those guys are not in the shape they could be in.
Right.
But that could be you if you're the one doing that. But you also got to think that you got to carry all that stuff, 30 plus pounds of gear all day long. And you're carrying that, and you're walking around, you're having to sit in a car, so get up and move yourself. The other thing is there's a level of uh, perception that citizens have. They see you walk up and you're out of shape or whatever, and they're gonna, whether you can fight or not, that doesn't even come into the picture in that first view. I remember, and I'm going to get off on a little bit, but there was a guy who was he was arrested, and he was charged with murder of a police officer. And so they found out that they got to talking with him, and he was totally candid about why he did it and all this different stuff. And so they talked to him. They said, "Why'd you did it? Why did you do that?" Because it turned out that there were officers that had come to his house like 2 days prior, consecutively, and they were coming to check on him. So first one comes up to his door, knocks on his door, and they were doing whether a welfare check, or they had warrant check, or whatever the case was. And they came to his door, knocked on his door. He said he saw him out the window, and he was home, just didn't answer the door. Next one comes up the next day, knocks on the door, he looks out the window, sees him, doesn't do anything. Third one comes up, and he's there. He said, and that's the guy that he killed. And so he said, "Well, why did you do that?" And he said, "Because I could." They said, "What do you mean by that?" He goes, "Well, the first two officers came up. They looked like they could handle themselves. They looked like they were in shape. They carried themselves well, the way they presented themselves. Whether they were, in superhuman Captain America shape or not, it's a different story. But they looked like they were able to carry themselves and handle themselves well. The third guy was obese. He was out of shape. He had a very low, he did not carry himself well, and his posture was poor, and all this different stuff. And he said he looked like he was somebody I could take. And so I did." And that's a huge thing, to think that just having that look, to being able to take care of yourself well, will make the difference in who you are and how you're perceived, and then how you're able to get your job done.
Oh, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And I've actually heard that story before, but it's amazing how it doesn't get any easier to hear it knowing that a fellow officer was killed.
Right.
But it does ring a solid point that, yes, first appearances can mean the difference between someone fighting, someone running. I've had teenagers tell me before. My first year, when I started, I was still in training. Got out, and I call it big crowd in the street. Some of the teenagers were fighting, and one of them said, "I ain't running. You look like you can run." Now, he would have probably outrun me, but that right there was the statement I needed to help keep me in shape the rest of my career, because
Yeah.
it was proof that it was psychological as well on their part. Uh,
Yeah.
where I live, the state troopers, for the most part, are in very good condition, and I know it's because they want to look squared away so that they can have that psychological effect on the people that they encounter, that they can handle their own, which I know most of them can.
Yeah.
But yeah, exercises not only to help us just live and feel better and look better. But you're right, it can affect your performance on the job very much.
Oh yeah, and because if you're duking it out with somebody and you're gassed after the first 10 seconds,
Oh,
what
you're done.
what good are you? Yeah.
Yeah,
Your
you're
mind,
done. Yep.
they're just grasping at straws on that one. So,
Yep.
which brings us kind of our next point, and my next one is martial arts. And this one kind of is big for me because I teach martial arts, and I oh 2 to 3 guests ago was I had the director of the Traditional Karate Do Federation International on here, and
Oh, awesome.
he's a great guy. He's got dojos all over the. He's the director of our federation that has dojos all over the world, and he's just a great guy. And his mindset was you help people, you teach people, and you be there for people, and you serve others. You're not there to beat anybody up, and that's basically his mindset, you know.
Exactly.
And so, and he's such a great guy, but this is a big one, and so I'm going to get into it. Boy, has Hollywood ever done a number on this one. Most people, no offense, are almost completely ignorant as to the true benefits of martial arts. Yes, you can learn hand-to-hand defensive tactics that will give you the edge you need in a physical encounter with a criminal. Obviously, that is a very, very high priority safety item when it comes to law enforcement officials. So I do not mean to de-emphasize that. However, just like yoga and deep breathing, martial arts also introduces a ton of time-tested meditation techniques and movement patterns that support mental well-being, calmness, and more. It also enhances proprioception, which is a fancy word for your awareness of where your body is in space. If you close your eyes and raise your hand, how do you know your hand is there? Proprioception is a very helpful skill when it comes to both fighting as well as maintaining a healthy posture. It is important to note that officers are encouraged to train in a form of martial arts that lines up with the defensive tactics we are taught. For example, learning to roundhouse kick someone in the face as in Taekwondo or other Kung Fu styles is not exactly applicable to the practical submission techniques we learn. Especially nowadays, this practice will not bode well for you. Alternatively, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Aikido are both focused on quick and efficient submission techniques that do not require you to strike someone, which is better for everyone involved, you and the criminal. I also found that through training in Krav Maga, you can learn multiple techniques from control and restraint to defending against multiple attackers. That's I like that because, and I'll tell a little story about me when I first got hired. Before my first day, they gave me all my gear, right? And I had gone in, I got all my gear, and I took it home, and I'm like, yeah. And I've been training in martial arts since I was 14 or whatever. And I done Taekwondo, and I actually got like third in the state for Taekwondos and for Taekwondo, and I'm in there, and one of my big things was I was good at a good roundhouse kick, and I could get that up really high, even though I'm fairly short. And I
Hmm.
broke this one guy's nose with a kick, and this whole deal. And I was like, I can kick and I can do all these different things. So that's what I based all my knowledge on, is what I thought I knew. So I get all my gear. Fast forward to getting me getting all my gear, and I'm at home. I put it on. I'm trying it on, looking in the mirror. Oh wow, you're this young cop, and you're totally squared away, and you think you're top stuff.
Yep.
I had my duty belt on, and I tried, and I'm stupid because as a young guy, you think you can do whatever, and you start punching the air like, oh yeah, and you have total movement. So I tried kicking with up high with my duty belt on, and my holster hung at that part where it just smacked into my leg because I tried getting my leg up there, and I'm like, I can't even do a kick. It hurts so bad because my gear was just blocking my legs from being able. And then I
Yep.
learned later on, like, no, you don't kick high. You don't want to be on one leg. You don't even want to kick if you can help it. The whole idea.
Right.
And so, but that's part of the gig, is you learn what not to do sometimes. And I'm glad I learned it there at home as opposed to learning it somewhere else. So
That's true. The only time I would recommend a kick is when you have that key on the bottom of your foot when you need to get in through a door for exigent circumstances or a search warrant. It'd be the only time I'd recommend kicking. But but I think that some of the incidents that have unfortunately brought police under a tremendously bad light, if I'm phrasing it right,
mhm.
certain situations could have been avoided had police officers known more hands-on tactics through Krav Maga, Jiu Jitsu. I'm a firm believer in that. It's like, seriously, if more knew what to do, they wouldn't be so quick to reach for stuff and tools on the belt. I'm not saying they don't have their place, but I've seen officers scared to death, and that's why they grab a taser, but they're already scared that someone's getting combative because they don't have anything else if that taser doesn't work.
Right.
That's not a good thing. That's why I put that in there. And as you can tell throughout the book, I'm kind of lighthearted, but yet I'm sincere in trying to really encourage more officers to participate in martial arts. Plus, you build this camaraderie with people you work with, and it's a way to have friends outside of a job. It's not just job survival. So it's many different things and benefits from training.
Right. No, and I agree. I sometimes have the responsibility and or pleasure, honor, whatever you want to call it, of training our new guys when they first get hired and putting them through getting through the initial defensive tactics, and before they go to the academy they have that checked off, and
Hmm.
so we'll go through and I get a 4-hour block with them and I teach them how to punch. I teach them how to new knee strikes and elbows and stuff like that. And so we go through the basics so that they have an understanding of how to move their body. And then we get them to the point where they have to actually use that stuff. We're using pads and we get a guy in a big old padded hitman suit and stuff like that. And they have to fight. And I've had guys who were collegiate athletes. I've got them puking into a bucket.
Yes.
They've not had to go for 2 minutes all out with a guy who's not feeling pain.
Right.
Hit the guy in the padded suit, he's not feeling anything. And so I've had these guys, and that's after we've just gone over how to throw a punch, just basic punches. And they're going through that and they're not realizing that they lose all technique. That's why I harp on technique to get it burned in there. And then they lose all that technique and they start just hammer fisting and trying to just beat on this guy who's not feeling any pain. And as they get through it, they get done and I say time and I cut the timer. They're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And some of them, like I've had some say, I just can't breathe. Right. And so
Hmm.
that's where the first one comes in line, get in shape. Second one comes in line. And then I've got new guys, they go through the academy and they go through all this stuff and they get out of field training and all this stuff. They're like, hey, are we going to do any defensive tactics again? I said, well, I don't know if we have anything on the schedule right now. Oh, I'd really like to do that again. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I agree. I think doing that on a base daily, or not daily, but a regular scheduled time, just like we go to the range and do stuff like that. And so I encourage people, just like you said, go get some fight training, do something where because if you're punching all the time and you do 1,000 punches a day or whatever, that's going to work when you need it to work because you've used it before. But like you
Yeah.
said, the taser might fail or something.
Exactly. And unfortunately, I've seen that taser fail, uh, versus not working. And g- I'm just glad that I had some skills when stuff went down,
Mhm.
and officers clearly did not know how to control someone. And fortunately, because of what I'd been taught, I was able to take control of the situation. But I mean, it's obviously great that you expose them to the red man suit.
Right.
That initial exposure is sometimes what people need to understand, like, wow, I need to get serious about this.
Mhm.
But also, if officers really cannot find, I don't want to say make excuses, but if you're really lacking in your training, then at least watch videos online of what to do and run scenarios through your mind. Because if we do that deep thinking of how you would react whenever something happens, once it does happen, your brain has rehearsed it because the subconscious mind doesn't know a thought from a reality. So if you're really rehearsing stuff over and over and over in your mind, you actually will react a lot better than someone who hasn't thought about it or practiced it at all.
Right. It's like having somewhere to go. Like, what do they say? Your Rolodex. They say, and for those of you that don't know what a Rolodex is, back in the days, we didn't have cell phones to put everything in. So if we try to find someone's phone number or address, we'd have this thing that was on a flippy thing and with a wheel on it, we'd roll through it and find the person. But I think of your mind being that same way, and I think that's what they say when people say, I saw my life flash before my eyes. Something happens crazy. And because their mind is trying to find something similar to that, so they know where to go. And so if they find something similar, it's flashing through all these different things saying, oh, that thing, let's grab onto that. That's similar to what we're at right now. And then they have an idea of how to react. But if you've never been in a situation before, a lot of people will freeze. And that's where we get the freezing thing of the somebody who is just, I don't know what to do. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Man, that was a profound analogy. I've never heard that before. Yeah, no, that was spot on. I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, it's true. It really is. You have to have. I always say you have to have more tools than what's on that tool belt.
right. Yeah, absolutely. So it's so huge to think that, if you haven't done it before, at least thought about it, you're gonna have nowhere to go. So it's just like, like you just said, hey, I hadn't thought of it like that before. But
Mhm.
now you're like, okay, now I'm gonna have something to go to, and I have an idea that might be a mental picture for people or something like that. So, but when you get to do something, it's like when you're at the range and you're shooting. Hey, I can, from this distance, I can shoot that thing fairly well. The further I get away, maybe I'm not as good a shot, or whatever the case is, or my breathing starts getting in the way, or whatever the case. But the more you do it, the more you go to the range, the more comfortable and you're like, man, that guy's getting to be a good shot. Well, he does it all the time. He's
Yeah.
more chance to. So just that way. So moving on, my next point. Um, this one is kind of a little bit different, and this is kind of cool, and that's wake up to something uplifting. Now, I'm following up with this point for a reason. This is what you can replace your impulsive morning phone check with. Instead of checking your phone and letting the negative stream wash over you, listen to something uplifting instead. It does not have to be some roided up bodybuilder screaming at you to get your worthless self out of bed. In fact, it may produce the opposite effect. It just has to inhabit a positive place in your mind. Even if it is just a sound of nature track, then fine. If you do love to be pushed and motivated, however, you absolutely can let Jocko Willink hype you up for a few minutes. Your mind is more susceptible to suggestion when you first wake up, meaning those first few messages you hear carry a greater impact then that can drive you through your entire day. If you listen to something positive, then you have greatly increased your chances of having a great day by making it a great day, not just passively hoping that things around you fall together. That is the distraction that lives in the heart of this little tip. If you ditch the phone and replace it with something uplifting, you are taking control of your day instead of walking in unprepared and just hoping you are dealt a good hand. Heck, I am listening to focus music right now and listening to the hip hop preacher, Dr. Eric Thomas, to start my day. Now, I know you're not doing that right now, but when you wrote this, I'm assuming that's what you were doing, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A lot of these things in the book that I wrote are actually written because I made the mistake of not doing so many of these things.
Right. You
I,
absolutely.
when I was battling PTSD, when I was battling an addiction, PTSD mainly started from after the deployments, but also because of what I'd seen in early years in policing and not coping with it.
Mm,
Same thing with the addiction. I would wake up and I would check my phone, and then I would check the news. Gosh, but I had no idea that when you wake up in the morning, or say you sleep during the day because you're on night shift and you wake up in the afternoon, that when you wake up, your brain is at the pretty much the most formidable time in the day
right.
where an easy impression can be made. And if you and we are what we are expose our minds to. So if I mean, you're going to have plenty of negativity at the job, whether it be internal and or external.
Right.
The, I would wake up, check the news, check Facebook. Next thing you know, I'm like, oh, shoot, I'm running late. Hurry up, get the uniform on, forget my lunch because I was in a hurry, and then get mad about that. Show up to roll call and be like, man, I still got 12 hours of this stuff and I already had a bad day.
Yeah.
Wake up to something uplifting. And if you're like, man, I don't want people to know that I'm meditating, I don't want people to know that I'm listening to nature music, then don't tell anybody. But I have found that over the last almost 3 years, my life has really changed because in the more I have made time to mentally prep myself for each day, whether I'm working days or nights. And people like Jocko, Dr. Eric Thomas, Les Brown, these are all people who preach success,
Yep.
have made it, and they're all, I mean, they're human.
Right.
So they're going to give you concepts that you can adapt, not just, well, I'll never be like them. What's the point in listening to them? No, they're saying stuff that everybody can do. It obviously just takes some effort.
Sure. Yeah. No, I did. Same thing. Either listening to Jocko or Dr. Peterson or, Les Brown, like you said, those guys. And, you listen to their stuff, but you talk to them, you read their books, and it makes a huge difference when you're like, okay, so I'm putting good stuff in, and how am I do I let that start my day? The more I think about, the more I do that sort of thing, I'm able to maybe I'm not the most motivating person or whatever, and I don't know how much of a say I have in other people's lives. Obviously, I could, or I could not. I don't know, but I do know that I try to do what I can. I try to be as positive I can based off of those things that I listen to or I fill my own brain with.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you are making a difference with this podcast, but also think about when, to anyone listening, think about when at the time when you go into a room full of negative people, what do you start to feel? Negative. I mean, there's energy. And I actually do open up the spiritual part of the book about with the fact, even if you don't believe in God or follow the faith, there's energy. Well, there's energy when you listen to something positive, when you do something positive and wake up to something uplifting, there's that energy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is underrated, but definitely profound and true.
Right. You know, and kind of how you went through that and you talked about that. I I had just read that chapter or that portion, um, just read it this one morning, and I go to work, and I'm sitting there at work, and I was talking to one of our new guys, and we have a gym at work, so I get there fairly early. I work out, and then I go to the locker room, and I'm in there, and I'm getting ready, and this one of our new guys, young guys, he maybe a police officer 2 years or something. He comes in, and he and I were talking. He had done something, got in his locker, whatever, and he was working graveyard, so he was getting ready to get off shift, and I'm getting ready to get on, and I say, all right, man, I'll talk to you later. He goes, yeah, that's all right. I've only got an hour left and then I can have my life back. And
Oh,
I said, no, no. I said, no, you don't seem to understand. And he walked out, and I didn't think about it, but I did think about it, what he was saying. And I said, I don't think you understand this. Your life is your life. It's
yes.
yours. All 24 hours, 365 is yours. And all of that is yours. So you make it what you are. And I understood what he was saying because I'd been there before. And
Me
I
too.
thought that. And he's early 20s, which is it's fine. But I I realized that I don't feel that way anymore. There was a time that I did feel that way, and I don't feel that way. And I said, no, my life is mine. And if I'm going home and I paint my fence in my backyard. I painted that fence. Ken painted that fence. I built a bookshelf in my house. Ken built that bookshelf. I changed the oil in my car. Ken changed the oil in his car. I go to work and I have to go arrest somebody. Ken arrested that guy. If I have to go write a report, Ken wrote that report. So you put your name on that. You're going to put your name on your fence that you painted. You're going to put your name on the bookshelf you built. You're going to put your name on your report. Everything's you. It's make it what's yours. Now, there's certain lanes that you have to stay in when you're doing it. There's rules that you have to follow, sure, but it's yours. Make it yours and go have fun with it. Don't if you're just sitting there dragging and you're letting somebody else control you, you're going to think I can have my life back in another hour. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, and language is very important. I didn't really understand that when I was going through hard times mentally. I
Right.
would say negative things like that, and I did not know that what you speak is what your brain hears and it's what your brain registers. So if you say, "Gosh, I'm an idiot," what does your mind hear? And it'll open up information as to and it'll through the I'm going to get a little technical here, through the operation of what we call the reticular activating system, a part of your brain that is like a filter. And what you make important is what that filter picks up on through your senses.
Yeah.
So if you say like I'm an idiot, well, guess what? As you go throughout your day, the brain's going to pick up on maybe a mistake you made, and it's going to amplify it to, well, you're an idiot. And that guy, that younger officer saying, well, I have my life back. What's his brain hearing? Well, he must not like his job. And if he says that enough negative language in his job, then unfortunately it can roll over into life as well.
Absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
and that's like just like the person that says, oh, I don't feel good or my stomach hurts all the time. Well, you're telling your brain you don't feel good. So
Yep.
when I get sick or I start feeling that way, I don't give it the time of day, and I'm not going to give it power per se, and it's just like,
Mhm.
it's like, saying, not today, Satan,
Yep.
you're not letting him know what to do and what your weaknesses are. So I'm not going to let this sickness know what my weaknesses are. I'm not going to let this mindset of I can't do something know what my weakness is.
And amen. And I believe overall, police departments, and I guess really it starts in the rookie schools. We really have to change the language and the mentality of the job. I know we're going through a lot right now. It's very unfair how the media paints all of us with this just negative broad stroke. It's not right. But at the same time, if we can equip our minds the same way we equip our bodies with a bulletproof vest and 20 other 20 pounds of gear on our hips, or if you wear a tack vest, on your on your torso.
Mm.
If we could equip our minds with just as much knowledge and tools, then I think that we could really have a different perspective on things. It wouldn't make it right that they're doing it, but we would be able to handle the stress of it a lot better.
Yeah, just be able to withstand the storm a little bit more.
Exactly. And statistics don't lie. I mean, already this year, I believe over 57 or at least 57 police officers have committed suicide. In one of my books, I write about how between 20 to 30% of police officers working patrol on the streets, per a study on Psychology Today, 25 to 30% will battle substance abuse issues. I mean, the stats are not fabricated, and we can't run away from the numbers. It amazes me how officers are so not necessarily scared when they approach a car on a traffic stop, but they're aware that this could be the time when someone shoots them.
Right.
But yet we're not aware and taking seriously how this could be the day you wake up and your mind starts going down a bad road towards suicide or depression or addiction and stuff like that, which can ultimately steamroll. So I know that was kind of a tangent, but
no, that's great, because I've heard guys talk about that, the check engine light. And do you know when your check engine light comes on? Do you have a relationship with your friends and those closest to you to know when their check engine light's coming on, that they may not realize it, And if that comes on, what do? You take it to the mechanic, or you take it into the shop or whatever, and you say, hey, this is happening. Oh, okay, cool. What do we do with ourselves? Or are we just too tough, too ego driven to say, nope, I'm fine, I'll do whatever, and just keep, pouring whiskey on your check engine light? You can't pour whiskey on your engine and say, hey, it's going to be fine, it's going to do well.
Oh, no, definitely not. And the author / friend of mine who wrote the foreword for this book, he battled the alcoholism very bad, and it got to a point where it was almost to the point where, like, you might have cirrhosis of the liver. I mean, he drank so much.
Yeah.
And I know he's not the only one. A lot of officers go through it.
Yeah.
But if we can change this mentality, and I think it's going to start in the rookie schools, if they can implement more personal health, mental well-being blocks of instruction, and then repeat the training all throughout your career, it can definitely help. It can do better than what we got now, which is pretty much nothing overall.
I agree. Which kind of brings me to the next tip that I want to bring up, and that's surround yourself with positive music and podcasts. And we'll get into it. So, if the audio content you surround yourself with on a daily basis is the neurological equivalent to a fast food diet, then can you really be surprised when you become mentally sluggish, negative, and unproductive? I would be the last one to deprive you of your culture or to judge your experiences and preferences in life, but there is a line here. On one side is awesome and uplifting music, which can be found in every culture, but on the other side is profane and hateful music that objectifies people, glorifies violence, and so on, which can also be found in most cultures. My point is that you can still enjoy the style of music you like, no matter what style it is, without the hate and the negativity. What you listen to informs how you feel. Listen to sad music and your brain will release sad chemicals. Listen to negative music and the same happens. In addition to keeping your musical influences positive, I have found great inspiration, solace, and amusement in podcasts, many of which are free nowadays. You can learn a ton of actually useful concepts in podcasts that will help you enrich your family life, financial well-being, mental and spiritual health, and much more.
You can.
I agree with that.
I don't even listen. I'm sorry. What'd you say?
I said I agree with that 100%. So
awesome. Well, thank you for pointing that part out. And for those that are listening first time to Ken's podcast, please subscribe and continue to listen. But also, it's just one of those things where, once again, the language and what we expose our mind to is what we become. And we're already battling enough stress and trauma on the job. Why not give your brain something to withstand it all and build it up, just like you try to build up your biceps when you're doing curls at the gym.
Right. I think about it, and we kind of just mentioned it a little bit ago, where what you're putting in is what you're going to be getting out.
Yep.
And I was thinking about bringing up the topic of, how music you listen to, blah, 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 but I forgot that I remembered that I picked out this topic. But you go into the gym, and I don't know about you, but if I'm going when I go work out, the music that I listen to is not easy fare music. It's not hip hop stuff. It's not light I love you stuff, and you're not going to hear top 40 stuff. It is some of the hardest, and my wife calls it my angry music.
Yeah.
And it's just hard heavy metal, right? And that's what I'll listen to in the gym if I'm not listening to a book on Audible or something. But um that's what I listen to when I'm working out. It's because that's where my mind wants to go. Because the more I can do that, the more it just kind of keeps me fueled for that. But there's other times that's not what I want to listen to. I mean, I like that. It's my favorite bands or whatever from the genre. However, that's not what I always want to listen to because I got my kids in the car, or even, yeah, I'm going to date myself here really quick. My grandkids in the car. I'm not listening to that. If I
Right.
have my wife and we're going on a date or something like that, I'm not playing my angry music because that's obviously not what she wants to listen to. We're, I have actually we listen to 70s and 80s music. It's kind of goofy, but it's something that we both can kind of hum to or whatever. So
Yeah.
where your mind goes is where I hear my wife listen and she'll have worship music or whatever on. When I come home, she's got the Amazon girl. I'm not going to say her name. She'll lie.
It'll come on. But also, when you're listening to that heavy metal stuff when you're working out, you're releasing those endorphins because you're getting those extra reps in. So that all balances out.
Right, right, and that's where it comes from. But like we said, it's what you put in is what you're going to get out.
Yep, 100%, 100%.
So just watch your music and what you're listening to there. So, next tip, and this one we kind of cover this on a podcast, several podcasts ago with my guest of mine, Susie, and she's a just got back from being deployed, and she was a dispatcher, and that was counseling, and she couldn't talk more highly enough about counseling and how important it was, and stuff she brought up was just so poignant. And here I'll read what you had to say. Where many of the techniques we have covered so far have indirect, albeit powerful effects on your mental health, counseling is an absolutely crucial head-on approach for officers who experience mental health issues at one time or another. This is the majority of us. Honestly, counseling should be mandatory for law enforcement officers because, by definition, our career exposes us to things that the brain is not wired to experience. We are subjected to traumatic images and the constant threat of harm, and some officers argue they can just deal with it. It is like asking a calculator to spell check your reports. It is not possible for your brain to deal with this repetitive trauma unless you are a bona fide sociopath. In mental health, Fight of the Heroes in Blue, I recruited the wisdom of several life coaching, psychology, and neuro-linguistic programming experts who provided some general yet highly insightful tips about how to deal with the stressors of the job. By seeking counseling for your unique situation, you can access even more personally relevant action plans to keep your mental health at an optimal level. Seeking counseling is not surrendering or wussing out. It is simply taking charge of your health and fixing the problem, and it is always confidential. You do not have to be on your last straw. In fact, it is better if you get help when the issues are still nagging and not yet detrimental. I guess that's that check engine light I was talking about.
Oh, it definitely is. It definitely is. And I know officers don't like to hear go get help because they feel like they can't do something on their own. Let me tell you, one of the most profound things a psychologist ever told me when I was going through treatment was, Scott, and I had been seeing this psychologist for several months. Psychologist said, Scott, I can only do so much for you. You are going to have to make the choice to turn your mindset around. I'll never forget it. And at that point, I realized it's not it's just what it is. It's help. You ultimately have to make the decision. You ultimately, I mean, yeah, you make the decision to go get the assistance, but when you think help because you can't do anything, you are still going to have to be the one to do it. It's just kind of like a field training officer. They're going to point you in the right direction so that you're more equipped to handle the things that you're going through.
Right, right. I guess think about like a coach or a trainer or something like that, for like a boxer or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
the boxer has to do the work, but he may be able to do so much, but then you put a coach or a trainer in there and they're pushing him further and they're saying, do this now. And then we're going to train it to this. Tomorrow we're going to do this. And, you know, I, I heard somebody say one time that somebody just chose to do their UFC fight or train for the UFC fight on their own, and it's all right. I'll train on my own, and they did okay in their fights and stuff like that. But then once they chose to get a trainer or coach, they kicked it up. So maybe you can get 90% or 75% as good as you're going to get. You add that coach, and you're going to hit that hole. You're going to get that next 25% that's going to just take you farther than you thought you were going to go, because they're pushing you. They're offering you this direction to go.
Yeah, and we're never going to be perfect either. So why not have someone, whether it be a coach or a psychologist, to help you strive for being excellent rather than just average?
Right.
Because we're never going to be perfect. So you do need that extra oomph to get you to that next level, in my opinion. And when I did talk in the book about, or briefly wrote, how if you just deal with this stuff on your own and then you become kind of numb, or when you become emotionally withdrawn, that can be a symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder. But also, I did put that word sociopath, because if I've known some officers before who use very dark humor. That's not, if your dark humor is getting to the point where it's raising some eyebrows, that's a sign that you're being affected by the job.
Yep.
And at that point, yeah, I would say go talk to someone. Go get some professional assistance.
There's a good chance you're bottling things up that you don't realize you're bottling up. And then once you get that stuff out there, and you can just totally open it up and say, "Hey, this has happened." And somebody says, "Well, why did that?" And you don't even know it. So they start going down rabbit holes, and they release those floodgates for you. And all of a sudden, holy cow, I feel so much better. I didn't know I was bottling that up, or I was keeping that, close to the vest.
Right. And it's also amazing how the brain will not, you as a person will not really want to change. Like, you want to change, but there's still going to be that resistance where you have to do the work to change. And your
Mm.
brain's going to be trying to hold you back to keep you in a negative state, because the brain doesn't like to do anything new. It loves a routine. So if you're in the routine of having depression and PTSD and experiencing all those signs and symptoms as a routine,
Mhm. Mhm.
you're not going to want to do the work. Hence another reason why you need that professional assistance, just to help get you out of it and keep you encouraged, or at least reach out to another officer. I've helped plenty of other officers who were going through a rut at the same time that I was going through a rut, but we partnered together and we worked our way out of it.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a job where we can just go through it on our own and expect nothing to happen to us mentally, or expect just to handle it on our own by any means.
No, I agree, and I think that's why we need to develop relationships with each other. We have to
Hmm.
know who our buddies are. We need to Are they good to go to back me up if I need them? But are they capable of doing that, not just physically, but mentally? Are they there? I mentioned this before. When I was on SWAT, we would line up before an operation, and we have one guy go down the line. How you doing? Everything good? Yep, I'm feeling good. Everything good at home? Yeah, everything's good at home. And how's mama doing? They want to know how your wife's doing. Is she good? She know you're here. All this different stuff. Not that you're hiding the fact. Oh, I'm a SWAT. She doesn't know I'm a SWAT. That's not what I mean. But have you told her that you were, where you're going? Obviously, you can't tell the details about what's going on, but hey, we're doing this, and she understands. She support you. All that different stuff. And the majority of guys are, yes, their mindsets there. They want to know about your, are you struggling financially? And they don't want to know the details once again. But if you're doing that, if you're in debt, or you have, a foreclosure impending or something goofy like that, your mind's on that stuff.
Yeah.
About that. And so if your mind's doing all that stuff, if your mind's not good because you're having you and your wife have a strained relationship, or your kids are, on the run or something, you're not able to focus. So having that relationship to know where you're at with somebody else, and like I said, knowing when their check engine light comes on, are you able to come alongside them and help them out, even if you're
Hmm.
not a counselor or you're not a psychologist or whatever?
Oh, it can be the difference between someone having a bad day and then someone having a worse day. Like, they could just be having a bad day. You asked them how they were doing, so it didn't get any worse. You were able to keep them afloat. It really could be what it comes down to.
Yep. And I mention this all the time. It's that little pebble, that little pebble that you throw into the pond, the ripples that it makes. They reach to the shore. So the one
Absolutely.
thing you say one day could very well be the thing that, had you not asked me how I was doing, I yeah, I probably would have gone home and committed suicide or something like that. And you don't
Yeah.
need. So when in doubt, err on the side of professionalism and develop relationships with people. I,
Right. Right. And I've gone through numerous counseling sessions in the police department, never found out about them because it's a medical thing. It's confidential. Now,
Right.
obviously, if there were certain red warning signs there, they might have to say something. But just dealing with trauma,
Mhm.
just because you feel sad or you're you know binge eating or you're addicted to porn and those are unhealthy ways of coping with it, no, they don't have to report that. So if anyone's worried that your place of employment might find out, believe me, I've been through this stuff. I Not once did they find out. I'm only talking about it so that I can help other officers get through it. Have to be vulnerable and open to be like, look, I've been there, so I get it. But it's going to take work on your part. Why not have the extra counseling? And
Yeah.
also, if I can just throw this out there right quick,
Sure.
I know that a lot of us officers we'll park our vehicles side by side and then we can just vent for hours and talk about all the negative stuff that's going on, whether it's the administration or what's going on in the country. My rule is this now. It's a new rule that I learned about when it comes to venting. Give yourself 5 minutes to vent about all the negative crap you want. And then at the end of the 5 minutes, you have to start talking about something positive, or you have to start offering up solutions as to how you can fix whatever might be going on if you can fix it. So that's just kind of
That's
a
actually another
tidbit.
tip in the book that I didn't pick out for this podcast, but that's one of the other tips that you talk about. Vent,
Okay, all
but
right.
make it a minimal vent. But so no, I absolutely agree with you. And when people go buy this book, they'll be able to find that and read details about that. And because you not only talk about that, but then you talk about that in another way and say, okay, I'm going to harken back to this one back before, and it's totally cool. It's totally cool. So
Okay, well, good deal. Yeah, obviously I don't remember all 100 things, all 101 things I wrote.
no, and that's
And I even put that in the book that people aren't going to remember 101, but at least if they can remember one new thing or two new things or five new things and act on them,
right.
it'll definitely be a help. But good,
Right.
I'm glad I put that one in there.
Yeah, no, and I hadn't even thought about it until you just said it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's in the book. I remember that. So that's cool. So I'll read the next one here. And the topic of this one is read. How exotic, right? I realize this is a non-starter for a lot of people, but hear me out for just a moment. You know that anxious, overwhelming feeling when you get when you are reminded of the fact that you should read because it is good for you, but you do not have the time. Well, not to get too personal, but let us take a look at your time, shall we? Mindlessly scrolling through Facebook after work. Swap it out and read. Kicking back with a new Netflix hit. Keep it to 2 episodes or less and then read. Point being, reading is one of the most productive pastimes that is still really entertaining once you find the right book. So it is a win-win if you just swap out your less productive pastimes with it. Simply sitting down and reading will help immensely with stress and anxiety. To add an extra layer of mental health support on, you can read positive and uplifting books that give you a new perspective on life. It does not have to be some modern self-help book for police officers either, maybe like the one I'm reading right now. You can read Seneca, for goodness sakes, the ancient Roman Stoic philosopher, and learn plenty about what it means to be happy in the darkest of times. And that's huge, being able to read and knowing the benefit of that.
It really is, and it does help deal with stress and anxiety. And you don't have to read a whole book in 2 days. Just read something.
Yeah.
It will greatly change your life and open your mind. And once again, strengthen that brain, which is a muscle. And a little personal testimony: I've been reading consistently for the last 2, 3 years.
Mhm.
I've actually I've actually read books about how to set myself up financially, and I've earned more in the last few years through passive income than I did any other years prior to, where I was just relying on one paycheck because of police pay or my military pay. So
Mhm.
there's a good reason to read. It can mean more money for you so that maybe you can retire a lot earlier than that 30-year mark for those who are in states that require 30 years.
Yeah. I would say that I have read more in the past 2 years than I have my entire life.
Same here.
I just got into that point where I started seeing that people are saying, "Oh, you got to read, you got to read." I'm like, "Oh, I hate reading." And my stepdad always wanted me to read when I was a kid, and he'd always say, "Okay, you reading a book?" And yeah, and it was never, I never got into them. So I read like the Indiana Jones books, or I'd read, Conan books or whatever when I was a kid. And as a kid, as what it is, but I never, I never thought there was anything that I really got interested in, and so then I thought I'm not a good reader. I'm not a very fast reader, and I'll admit that it takes me little bit longer than some to read some things. However, I've read more books, like I said, in the past 2 years because I started realizing that if you want to do anything, you want to go anywhere, you got to be reading a book.
Yep.
And so the more people I talked to that were, hey, I'm doing this, or I'm going here, or I'm, I was like, oh, wow, so how did you get to that point? Oh, I just started reading, and I was reading this book the other day, and everybody, I'd say 100% of the people I would talk to, they say, well, I read this book, or I was reading this book, or I'm in the middle of this book. And I'm thinking, oh, so there's something about that. So reading is absolutely huge.
It really is. And it will take work. It will definitely take work. But I love it how Les Brown used to say, well, he still speaks, but pre-COVID, when he would still speak, he always says, I don't want to misquote it, when you do what is easy, your life will be hard. But when you do what is hard, your life will become easy.
Yes.
Reading is not some walk in the park. Like, you have to put forth the focus and all that, but just as anything else, it can make your life better the more tough things you do for yourself.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I've actually heard Les Brown say that. I watch his videos or his speeches and stuff on YouTube, and
He's incredible.
yeah, his story is huge too, because
It really is. Yeah.
It was like he said that they called him dummy or whatever, that he was a twin, I think, and that he was the dumb twin, and that I think he was even he was diagnosed mentally retarded or something at some point too.
He was, and that's when that teacher told him to write something on the board. He said, I can't do that. They've deemed me educationally retarded or something. And the teacher said, someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because that is 100% right, because it does. And don't listen to what other people tell you. You tell, like we were talking before, what are you putting in your brain? What are you telling yourself? And if you are telling yourself, your brain's going to start thinking that. So enough people told him that's what he thought. But I don't know. I would disagree with, I like that whole idea that somebody's idea of you is not you. It's yours. So I remember a story someone told me at one point was, somebody said, hey, if you meet somebody and say it's a teacher in school or whatever, and they say, hey, you get up front and you say, yes, Mr. Smith. And they say, no, you can call me Joe. My name's not Mr. Smith. My dad's Mr. Smith. You call me Joe. And then the person who was telling me this, they said, my thought was, I was raised differently. I was raised to the point that I respect people, and I'm going to call you Mr. Smith because that's how I was raised. What you want to be called is one thing, that's fine, but that's not going to change who I am. So I'm going to continue to call you Mr. Smith because I know you deserve respect, and I know you want to be called Joe, but you're Mr. Smith to me because the idea of you having a laissez-faire attitude towards this, this relationship that we have, this teacher, student, or whatever, it's not going to deter me from how I was raised to show proprietary or to be proper, to do what's right, and to respect other people. And so I was like, yeah, that's right. You're not going to tell me, you're not going to demean or diminish who I am based off your lack of wanting that. So
absolutely. And I think that's pretty important now, considering we are being, in my opinion, unfortunately, the bad apples have made it very, very tough on the rest of us. But at the same time, I understand when people yell things at us, it's not easy to take in. But when it comes down to it, most of the stuff being yelled is an opinion. Just because of the uniform you wear, it does not determine the kind of person you are, the officer you have to be.
Right. You know who you are.
Yeah.
And be comfortable and confident in who you are. So I'm going to read, I'm actually going to read several in a row, and about 6 of them in a row. And they're all pretty quick. And that is, the first one is, don't measure the size of the mountain. Talk to the one who can move it. That's by Max Lucado. And so next one is by Joyce Meyer. She said, courage is fear that has said its prayers and decided to go forward anyways. The next one is by Father Mike Schmitz. If all Jesus ever knew about you is what you told him in prayer, how well would he know you? That one really struck me. I was like, oh yeah, you think, how much do we really have that relationship or conversation with him? So be the type of person that when your feet touch the floor in the morning, the devil says, oh crap, they're up. and that was Dwayne Johnson that said that. Pastor John Hagee says, God uses no one until he first puts them through the storm. The greater your mission, the greater your storm. Toby Mack says, focusing on the negative only makes a difficult journey more difficult. Ernest Hemingway wrote, courage is grace under pressure. And Victor Hugo said, have courage for the great sorrows of life and patience for the small ones. And when you have laboriously accomplished your daily task, go to sleep in peace. God is awake. And those were all, you put all those kind of, these are all tips, but just kind of rapid fire these tips. And you said you didn't want to, solely the impact of these pieces of wisdom may have on you by clouding your interpretation with more of Scott's interpretation. Finally, by keeping these nice and short, I can make it easy for you to look on them and repeat them daily in your insanity fighting mantras. So that's, I mean, it's huge because you can just look at those and say, oh yeah, that's right. Because you didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Quotations are very powerful.
Yeah.
They really are. They're underrated, but if someone can read them when they wake up, someone can read them before they go to bed, the brain will only benefit from it. I'll never forget when I really started paying attention to quotations was I had the former lead drummer of Toby Mac, who is a Grammy-winning artist.
Right.
The former lead drummer of Toby Mac's was B. Haley. And B. Haley, you can look him up online. He's leader of the We Are One movement. And he talked to the students at the alternative school where I was working at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he told those students that he has a vision board. And on his vision board, he has quotations that he reads every single day. And I thought, well, that's pretty profound. So I started doing it. And what do you know? It really changed things around. And that's why I put some of those quotes in there on the spiritual section. And I make it very clear I'm Catholic and I'm very strong in my faith.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a preachy person because I believe in preaching through action, not necessarily words. But I also make it clear throughout the book, even if you're not Catholic like I am, or you don't believe in God, there's still energy. When you read those good words, there's energy. So I still encourage people to go through it. But I also in that chapter, I say, look, if you really don't want to buy into any of this, go to the next chapter. But for the most part, I think I have encountered a lot of police officers who are believers.
Yeah,
and that's why I've put this chapter in there, mainly around the Christian faith. And those quotes are pretty powerful, in my opinion.
Yeah, are those on your board?
Some of them are. I've got a lot of pictures on there, so I can't just have just quotes. But I also have certain speeches that I listen to pretty much several times a week. Les Brown, Eric Thomas, and Brian Tracy. He's another one that I listen to. Yes.
Yeah, I listened to. So I used to drive to this gym that was near my house, and I would go there, and I'd have 5 or 10 minutes to drive, and I would listen to. This was before I started doing podcasts. This is before I was listening to podcasts, and I was just kind of getting into this whole when I started reading more books and stuff like that. And so it was something clicked on like my YouTube feed, and it was it was like motivation, and it was by this guy that does a whole bunch of different speeches, takes blurbs of these speeches and has like music under that kind of underscores them and stuff like that, right? And so I'm listening to these, and so one popped up on my YouTube feed as I'm driving to the gym, and I'm getting totally into it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is and that's when I started really listening to a lot of these people. And so that's when I was first introduced to Eric Thomas or Les Brown or and there's some that are way more assertive, the Jockos or the David Goggins or whatever.
David's a trip.
And so you get into those guys, and I just start listening to them, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So then when I started listening to their speeches and things they're saying, I would always take everything with a grain of salt, because I'm like, all right, because I was raised in a Christian home and all that stuff like that. And I knew that if I If what they're saying is cool, and we can try to apply it. It's great. And then I would say, okay, is there a biblical standing on this? Is there any kind of biblical basis on what they're saying? And whether they throw cuss words in it, or they're super aggressive, or whatever they say, whether it's a Les Brown or whomever, or if it's a David Goggins, which are two ends under the spectrum, but they're saying a lot of the same stuff, helping you, empower you, or whatever. Is there a biblical basis? And so I'm able to find stuff, and I'm always looking and think, okay, he said that. That's cool. I like what he's had to say. And then I'm able to find things biblical that support that, which is so much more cool for me anyways. But
it is amazing how much the self-help gurus and the success gurus will talk biblical principles, which in my opinion definitely validates the truth.
right.
And it is truth. And I have to say to any police officer listening that we must understand there's going to be evil in this world. And I know it's being amplified right now, and we're up against a lot, but we have to remember who created us, who's in charge. We're going to go through a lot. It's biblical. Like Jesus says it, we're going to go through a lot. There's going to be evil in this world, and it will be challenging, but never lose faith. Never strive for that relationship, and you can become that much stronger because you're putting more faith in the one who is ruler of all versus the earth, which will just be a big disappointment to you.
Right. Nope. And I had that same conversation with a guest I had a couple podcasts ago, Mike. He talked that whole thing. He's been a cop he's a top cop in my opinion, and he's but he talks about the rough road that he had to go through spiritually. And he said every time he went through a rough road, it was predicated by him actually during his prayer sessions or whatever. He said, "Hey, I want to be closer to you, Lord." And then all of a sudden it was just, okay, here's this. So he said
exactly.
And so but he's a great guy, and you get a chance to listen to that podcast. And 22 is I believe his number, 23 maybe. But Mike.
Okay, yeah, no, I will definitely listen to that. And I actually recite, I think I put it in the book, Psalm 91. I read Psalm 91. Actually, I've read it for so many years. I mean, I recite it now, but it's great for police officers. Psalm 91.
Yep. Before every shift, you said.
Yes, exactly. Every shift. And I know I'm part-time now, but like I'm working Friday night and then doing an event Sunday, I will recite Psalm 91 because anything can go down at any time. And there's actually a little bit of a testimony to Psalm 91. I did experience close mortar fire in Iraq, one particular incident where mortars landed close to my left and to my right. And Psalm 91 kind of references how 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but no harm should come near you. And that was kind of like, well, what I went through, like no harm came to me, but yet it was all around me. And yet somehow God pushed us through. And I remember praying in the heat of that attack. I said, God, please help us. And I just felt this overwhelming feeling of not being alone, that help was on the way. And I looked up, and here came a Huey helicopter and started flying towards the town where the mortars were coming from. And we were not scheduled for air support on that convoy. It was pretty powerful. So I'm a firm believer, and no one can tell me any different.
Right. Absolutely. And, and so you reciting that before every shift, you're obviously, that gets ingrained and just burned in your brain.
It does. Yep.
I know that one pretty well. So you're also able to use that if you have that at the ready, because you've used it so many times to yourself. Have it at the ready when you need to help somebody else, maybe somebody that's in need that you meet or talk to on the road.
Absolutely.
House or in their horrible, moment in their life. So yeah, That's awesome. So next one I'm gonna go, and this actually starts getting towards the end of the book, but it's the one is Real Friends Only. And it says, it is simply imperative that you make sure not to surround yourself with people who do not allow you to be yourself. It is not that you need a ton of friends you have known for your whole life, because even a new friend has the choice to either respect your unique weirdness or alienate you for it. If you are on the fence about a person as far as whether or not they will judge you, don't evaluate their behavior while you are hanging out. evaluate your own. That is where the answer to the question of being comfortable is. Can you be yourself around them or not? It is a fairly simple equation. I hate to say it, but no matter how close the person is, even family, if they constantly criticize, mock, or otherwise threaten your ability to express yourself, then it is time to spend less time with that person. Now, I'm not saying you have to totally ghost them forever, but it would be wise that you surround yourself more closely with people who will respect you for who you are. That one hit me that would hit me big time, especially the part that said the paragraph says, if you are on the fence about a person as far as whether or not they will judge you, do not evaluate their behavior while you are hanging out. Evaluate your own. That is where you can answer the question of being comfortable, of where you can be comfortable is. Can you be yourself around them? That's huge. We don't even think about that. We always think about, oh, it's everybody else, everybody else. Our ego gets in the way so much more than we should let it.
It definitely does. And this is obviously just one of those points that I wrote because I've made the mistake of hanging around people that I couldn't be myself around. They were bringing me down. And let me tell any police officer this: when you decide to commit yourself to becoming better mentally and physically,
Yeah.
you are going to take on this new appearance. You're going to take on this new mindset. And when people start to see that, regardless of how miserable they may be, they're not going to be that happy for you, most of them,
Right.
because they can't see themselves being that way. And therefore, they can get negative with you. Don't fall for it. And if you have to move on from them, find a different crowd that can continue to lift you up as you lift yourself up. I'm not, like I said, you don't have to go ghost on them and be negative, but make those people who can help you out and lift you up, make them a priority in your life. But I'm serious. Like the mentality I had when I had to resign from K9, where I thought policing was my life
Yeah.
and not my job, I've totally shifted mentalities, and it's led to starting my own speaking business and writing books and earning money on top of, in addition to just a paycheck. I'm telling you, your life and your mentality and your appearance is going to change. And some people are going to bring you down, try to bring you down because they can't see themselves being that way, like I said. So that's why I wrote this, but also because I've made the mistake of being around people where I couldn't be myself.
Yeah. You make you what do they say? Surround yourself with people who want the best for you, that want to see you succeed.
Yep,
And you're going to be the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. So
absolutely.
if you can hang out with those 5 people, and even if you're the least of those 5 people, you're still better than being the best of the worst people, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely, Ken. And as Steve Harvey says, if I believe he says, if 9 of your friends are broke, you're going to be number 10.
Yeah.
We are not only what we expose our mind to, is what we expose our mind to. We are who we are around, whether it be in life, outside of work, or at work.
Yeah. And I sometimes I don't spend time with people that I used to spend time with, because there's so much negativity with certain people. And there's times when, you'd be hanging out with them and you're there, you're doing whatever. And then all of a sudden it's something clicks and you realize this is not what I want. And this isn't who I want to be around. But you have to finish the time that you're around them, because
Yep.
just to walk away, like I'm done. That's
Right.
still going to be, like I said, err on the side of professionalism.
Right.
But
Exactly.
understand the next time, hey, we're going out, we're gonna go paint the town red or whatever. Yeah, I'm gonna pass this time.
Yeah.
The next time you're gonna pass on that one as well, because you've realized you have more respect for yourself, and you're holding yourself to a higher standard. And not that you don't think that they're good. They're not a good person. They're not good for you to hang out with as much as you used to. You still care for them. You're still going to respect them. You're going to show respect to them, but you don't have to. And I think there's a difference between respecting somebody and showing respect to, but
Yeah.
you don't have to surround yourself with them all the time. You need to focus on, like I said, putting positive things, and we've said it all the whole podcast, putting positive things inside of you, and reading things and listening to things that are just gonna support you and make you better. So if you're around people that want to see you succeed, you're gonna do so much better for yourself.
Without a doubt. Yep.
Yeah. So that kind of brings us to my next topic, and that is make friends with people who disagree with you. And you wrote, Obviously, similarities are very helpful in laying the groundwork for solid friendships. Being too much like each other can have its drawbacks. Sometimes, in fact, the most rewarding discussions people or between friends come from debates with and disagreements. It stimulates both parties to think creatively as they try to express their point differently and empathize with the other person. Debate is just a healthy tool for many reasons. This is not to say that you should practice a whiny, overly sarcastic arguing styles like those of the social media sphere. Is it just me, or does it seem like everyone is so polarized and upset nowadays? The point of a disagreement is not to get the other side to think how you think or to show them how dumb they are, but to produce your point in the best way possible so that they may reconsider how they think or enrich their current understanding of the debate topic with new information. If you just try to win, you will never win. If you try to contribute insight that could change someone's life for the better, then congratulations. You know how to disagree with someone like an adult. I feel like now more than ever, the world needs to adopt these mantras. It is okay if someone disagrees with you. That is their choice. Just because you think you are right does not mean you are. And you can still be friends with someone who disagrees with you.
It's a challenge, but I do believe it's necessary. It builds us up as people. And plus, if everyone agrees on the same thing, I think it'd be kind of a boring place to be in the world.
Right. You know, I think as I was reading this, one of the ones that really stuck out to me and made me think was that you don't have to try to prove someone that they're wrong, and you don't have to always be right. You can
Yep.
disagree, do that whole agree to disagree thing. And that doesn't mean that now you're at odds and you'll never be friends with them or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You like pistachio mint ice cream and I like chocolate. I'm still going to think you're wrong, but chocolate's still better.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that if someone has different morals than you do, that you continue to latch onto them as some best friend. I understand there is a line you have to ride. Like I'm not saying that if someone believes in something that's immoral and you have some ethics about you, that you stay close to them. Not by any means. This is just talking particularly politics. Like you don't, you don't have to agree on every kind of policy that is written and stuff like that. But it just seems like it's a dying art where people won't debate anymore, and it just seems like people won't. Just seems like we're walking on eggshells, and I definitely don't like it at all.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I said something to one of my lieutenants the other day, and we were talking. I said, life is not a zero sum game. Just because you get something and I don't doesn't mean that there's nothing for me to do. There's no way. I mean, it's like, say, like you're talking about you're writing books and you're more financially stable than you were previously.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that now I'm poor because you just told me that. Doesn't mean I'm now poor because I'm not doing that, so I'm broke. No, there's life is out there for everybody to take, everybody to have.
Absolutely. Yep.
So you go do it. You have a positive attitude about it. You can do whatever you want to go do, but it's not a zero sum game to where once somebody has something, somebody else doesn't have anything. And so that whole idea that if you're telling me that you're right and I'm telling you that I'm right, just because you are more emphatic about it doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, he's now making me wrong. It doesn't mean that. It just means that we both have a disagreement. I think now if we're saying that the sky is blue and you're saying nope, it's purple, well, it depends on the time of day, and I guess it depends on are you literally telling me that because you're looking at the prism of whatever the sky is, that sort of stuff. But that's not what we're talking about polarizing things where you're, politics or religion or all those things people talk about, don't talk about. Remember, it used to be that you can talk about sports teams is fine. Everybody can have everybody likes their sports teams, and this person liked Green Bay Packers, this person likes the, 49ers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's almost, that's getting to the point where you'll hear about, attacks or assaults at ball games against fans, against fans versus fans. And you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah. It's amazing. This is just me. I don't know if I really don't have like the evidence to back it up, but I think it's because of social media. Everyone's expecting an instant thought, instant satisfaction, instant agreement, and people are losing the art of dialect. I actually had to kind of force someone who was disagreeing with me on social media not too long ago. He disagreed very harshly, and I said, "Please give me a call." And I gave my phone number, and he said, "No, I'm good. I'm not." I said, "Just call. We need to talk." And
Right.
he really resisted it. But then we ended up having a 45-minute discussion, agreed on some things, but not exactly on how the way to get to those things.
Mm-hmm.
But I told him at the end of the conversation, I said, "This is what's going to make America better, having these conversations again, not just typing it out on social media,
Yeah, no, and I agree 100% because we do that too often where we can just keyboard warrior it and
Yep.
say, my thing and I got you. And then, because in our mind, we think that, if we have an argument or a conversation with somebody and I'm going to do it like they do in the movies where I'm able to say it and the person's dumbfounded and they have nothing left to say. But you do that on Facebook or you do it on whatever social media platform and you all of a sudden you say that and then you're like, got you. And then they come back, well, blah, blah, blah. I didn't think about that. So, I mean, just because it's in your brain doesn't mean that's the end result. You got to think of the big picture and, what do they call that? That's there's some kind of the Donning-Kruger effect, I think, or Dunning-Kruger effect, where somebody thinks that they know everything because they've not. So the more you know, the less you actually can do, or the more you think,
Oh, okay. All right. Interesting.
and then the more the less you think you know, the more you actually do know, or something like that. So like somebody who they spend their whole, their whole 20s and they beat up a punching bag in their garage, or they watch nothing but kung fu movies, right? And that's all they know. So then they walk out on the street, and they think, hey, I know all these martial arts, and they get out there and they get their butt kicked.
Okay. Right.
Because you don't know anything, but you think you do because you've told yourself. But then when you get the guy that actually goes to the gym or goes to the dojo all the time, and he's in there and he's really good, but he's gotten his butt kicked several times by others, and then when he goes in there, he's learned all these different things. He gets out on the street, he's like, no, he's a little bit more humble. He's like, no, I don't know that much stuff, and I'm really not that good. When everybody's like, no, yeah, you are. So it's like the more you know, the less you think you know, and the less you know, the more you think you know, which is kind of a goofy way to think about it. And so that's that idea that you think you know all this different stuff, but you don't know until you actually get into it and you start working it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. And hence the reason why conversations are good, because you can realize what you need to know or what
Yeah.
you may not have thought of. I think that's why a dialogue needs to happen.
Right. Well, yeah, and I agree with that because not only is it the dialogue needs to happen, but you even said your dialect needs to happen because you need to be able to, how to articulate what you're saying. You can't just,
Hmm.
hey, you're stupid.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You know,
Don't even get me started on the whole everyone takes it personal. Look, I went on one of those tourism buses the other day, but it was a comedy tour, and
uh-huh.
and it was great because the comedian was saying offensive jokes, and
Mm.
everybody on that bus was meeting the criteria of, I mean, including myself. Like, he covered everything equally, so everyone was equally offended. But you had the decision and the freedom to not agree with something and to just move past it and laugh at what was appropriate for you or what you thought was funny.
No, that's great, and that's the way comedy used to be. Remember, everybody was, you listen to those roasts or you watch those roasts.
Yes.
Somebody's up there and it's their birthday or whatever, and it's a roast, and all of a sudden everybody's just ripping on this guy, and everybody's equally doing it, and the person takes it, in stride. So the less you take it personally, and you drop your ego, the better you're going to be. That's that's the way I think of it, is just drop that ego. You're going to do well.
Absolutely. Yes. So speaking of which, if you do live in a bigger city where they have these buses that are do comedy tours, yeah, take them.
They're great, huh?
Oh yeah.
Have to do it next time we go. So, and so I'm gonna get on the last one here, and this one's pretty good, and this is actually number 101, and I'm kind of close it out with this one. So you say, care for yourself, and you can care for others. You were not blessed with the gift of life, so you could do nothing with it. You were not sworn in as a police officer, so you could sit idly while there are people out there who need help. You were made to protect and help others, and you maximize your potential in this area when you take care of yourself first. The voice that compels you to take care of others is already there. You just need to look out for yourself as well. As much as I wanted to take a more lighthearted approach with this book, I simply cannot fail to address the reality of the situation in terms of the mental health of police officers. The past 3 years have been hell for officers. So says the number of officer suicides exceeds on duty deaths. It is also a difficult time to be an officer, especially a good one, because the world has seen the worst of us. The tiny minority of officers who go off the rails, such as publicly dehumanizing George Floyd and killing Walter Scott, have soured the barrel as far as many people are concerned. But this equation can and will change. It has to change, and it starts with taking care of yourself daily. What did you I guess want to detail with that last line? Just taking care of yourself.
We only live once. And I don't come to any officer as someone who just knows it all. I come to you because I've gone through the pain of depression, PTSD, and addiction. And unfortunately, anxiety has been a chronic effect because of what I've seen, both from deployments, but also, don't get me wrong, from what I've seen on policing.
Right.
The more we realize and grasp the pure fact, we only live once. This job can suck the life right out of us, the life that we only get once. It is imperative to make it a priority to be well so that you can do that much better each and every day you're on the job. Never settle in life. Always seek to grow as a person, but you should never settle in your police career either. Always seek to grow and to be better, because had those officers, like the two incidents I mentioned at the end of the book, had those officers maybe taken care of their mental well-being, or how they sought out to be better cops each and every day. I don't know their story, but point is they screwed up.
Right.
And if we don't take care of ourselves, then we can falter and we can end up going down a bad road and be the next cop that ruins it for all the others.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, throughout the book, I am lighthearted. I am sarcastic. I want to keep your attention because that's who I am. But over the last 3 years, it has been very difficult because of officers just doing absolutely insane things, like the two incidents I mentioned. So that was kind of the thing. Just take care of yourself and be well so you can do that much better for yourself and others.
Nope, I agree with you 100%. Because I mean, and I don't know those guys from Adam. I don't know. I just know what's been on the news or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But there's at any time, I always think, that could be me if I'm not paying attention.
Exactly.
And like I said with our SWAT team guys, they always ask, how you doing? You doing okay? If your mind's not there, if your mind's on other stuff, or you get so it becomes mundane, or you're not thinking of every single time something could happen, where's your mindset on this stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's just how I wanted to close the book out, just to really emphasize, as well as some of the stories that people did write in the book, the personal testimonials, that none of us are exempt. I mean, it can, and the officers that wrote their stories in the book, they none of them woke up and said, well, today's the day I'm going to start planning out what life's going to be like for my family without me around, or today's the day I'm going to eat bad and develop cancer. Yeah, neither of them woke up and said that. So, but yet the job had an effect on them.
Right. And I always think, I hear a story, or I read or see a video, or whatever. And I always think, okay, this happened. That guy got up at some point, that girl, that person got up at some point and put their socks on, and they put their pants on one leg at a time. And they were combing their hair, they were brushing their teeth, they're looking at themselves in the mirror, and they were thinking, hey, I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to go do that today. No, they were thinking, hey, this is what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go do what I've always done. And if you're not consciously thinking, and just the routine gets in the way, you might miss something, because nothing's routine, especially not in our job.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Maybe somebody, maybe a bookkeeper thinks routine, you're always crunching numbers or whatever. I don't know. But I know in ours, if you just, something bad happens, but you woke up that morning, oh, I'm so tired, or you didn't take the precaution, like you mentioned in the book, 100 different ways of doing XYZ. wake up, put good stuff in your mind, read good stuff, do these things, care about your other people, care about yourself. And it's all about wanting to do good and patching things up or fixing things before they get bad, or just maintaining in a positive way. And you're not gonna nobody wakes up in the morning. And I don't know a single cop that wakes up in the morning thinking, I'm gonna go mess up today, guys. You're at roll.
Correct.
Everybody's just kind of, shooting the breeze. And he's like, hey, I'm gonna mess up today, everybody. So just make sure that you tomorrow news crews should be here. And I'm gonna, nobody's doing that, that.
Correct.
But unfortunately, there's something out there that says that we're out there just trying to hurt people, and that's obviously not the case. I don't know a single cop that does that, but I know there are some that they need to be helped back on track, and that's
Yep.
where us having a relationship comes in, and they say, oh yeah, thank you for pulling me back, because I was kind of getting off a little bit, and I got to remember where my lane was, or whatever the case is.
Yep. And arm yourself with as many resources as you need, like 101 health tips for police, and then act on them. Knowledge is only so good. You have to act on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like you were talking about in the book, there's several other stories. I'm not going to read them, but they're like these. At the end of each chapter, you have a personal, somebody writes kind of a little thing about, little bio about what happened with their big story in their life and stuff. And there's some tragedy in there, and there's some, there was one that I was reading. I was like, holy cow. And this starts out good. And I just thought it was going to be, oh, it's going to be, they bad day and they got help and they're good. No, it got tragic. And
It did.
that one,
It did.
holy cow. And it just blew me away as I'm reading it. And so I stopped for a second and I skipped forward. I'm saying, oh, there's still another 3 or 4 pages on this one. This story is a little bit longer. And I thought every time you think you're at the end, it's like, oh, and then this happened. Oh, and it just keeps snowballing downhill. And as I'm reading that one, it really, really got me. So there's some tragedy there, that if we're not taking care of things, we're not watching it. Had somebody been watching and or taking care, or had the care to come up alongside their brother and be a kind of a tugboat, getting them into port, there wouldn't be this issue. But unfortunately, there is. And so, but that book this book is filled with that. Besides the tips, it has all these things on it. There's other side stories, and I couldn't encourage this book enough to police officers. I'm gonna actually, I think I'm gonna get an entire a bunch of copies of this and give them to my team at work, because I think that it's just good stuff. It's just fun stuff. And so I would encourage anybody listening to it, if you don't have a copy of it, check out 101 Health Tips for Police Officers. And you can even just go to Amazon, type in Scott Medlin, and you got several books on there, correct?
I have 2. I've got a third one that I'm working on right now. It's going to be I don't know the title just yet, but it's pretty much going to be like what the rookie schools should tell you, but they don't.
Oh,
so it's going to be like a bunch of stuff like that in my third book. But yeah, so I got 2 books out, third one in the works.
What's the first one called, or the other one called?
Mental Health Fight of the Heroes in Blue.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I'm only self-published on Amazon. So if you do go to Amazon, type in Scott Medlin and my books will come up. And hopefully maybe there's some show notes you can put the links under, and they can just click on it from there with their phone. But here's also the good thing about my books. Like they're not that long. I mean, they're kind of like field manuals. You can read them very quick, and they're very quick reference, so that you're not spending a ton of time stressing over whether or not you can finish a book.
Right. No, and I read most of this. I had gone on a trip and I was reading it on the airplane, and I don't know a lot of, like we were talking about, you just don't know what the climate is, or it's just the person sitting next to you or whatever. And so if you see the book, it is all curled up, because I would curl it up, because the blue and red lights, because that's what's on the cover, is a police. Yes. I'm like curling that over, because I don't know who the person next to me is.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate. However, you just go down that line of, I'm reading it and it's an easy read for me, because like I said, I'm not a quick reader. And as there's, you read so much and then you have a break. Okay, I can lift my eyes up, I can look around. And this is actually a perfect cops book, to be honest with you. You can,
well, thank you.
Everybody that, a cop, what do? We sit at the back table. I think you mentioned it, one of the chapters here too. It's, you sit at the back table, or you tell your friends, hey, can you move so I can see the door? Or, we sit at the movie theater and we're in the back, far back corner, all that sort of stuff. On an airplane or in an airport, I'm trying to read a book. I can read 3 paragraphs and I'm done with that portion, and I can look up and I can look around. I get out of that white zone and I can get back down into the book, and it's like a perfect cops book, to be honest with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah. So Scott, whatever you said that what else you got going on as far as working? I mean, other than Amazon, can people find your books anywhere else, or?
No, they are just on Amazon. I'm self-published through Amazon.
Okay.
But I do have a YouTube channel where I talk about what is in the books, but also just other stuff based on 12 years of active experience in law enforcement. I'm also training now. I gave a speech last Friday to the First Responders Conference and did a whole webinar on how to mentally survive the career of being a first responder. So that's what I'm doing now. It's very fulfilling to hear back from other officers, like, great stuff. I didn't know this. Now I do. Thank you so much.
Right.
I mean, I'm here for fellow officers because, unfortunately, like I said, the statistics are pointing down a bad road where mental health is really taking a toll on us. So I want to be able to help you out. So please reach out, follow me on YouTube. It's called the Law Enforcement Motivation Channel. Probably going to rename it, but Law Enforcement Motivation Channel for now. And we already have over 600 subscribers, and it's growing. So
go to subscribe, and if and when you change the name, it'll just notify people that the name's been changed, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I can keep all the same channel and just change the name of it. So this is a movement, but we have to move and not be stagnant.
Right. It's a Law Enforcement Motivation Channel on YouTube.
Yep.
Okay. Or could you just type in Scott Medlin on YouTube, and will that pop up?
There's a few other Scott Medlins that have YouTube channels. So type in Law Enforcement Motivation Channel.
Okay, very cool. And so what else you got going on? Anything you got new speaking gigs coming up or anything like that people can catch you
at? None off the top of my head in the next few weeks or so, but there's a few in the works, and whenever they do come out, I will get on my YouTube channel, maybe do a live video or something, let people know about it. But I really enjoy talking to other police officers and introducing them to this new way of thinking, new way of taking care of yourself based on the mistakes I've made, but how I've really changed things around. And one other thing, I know I don't do it active anymore. It's because it was getting too rough on my family. I have children, and it was getting too rough. I wasn't seeing them every other weekend. So yeah, I made the point to put my family first. And I know I hear that from a lot of police officers, put your family first, but yet their families are still suffering. I encourage you to take that leap because your family is what matters most. And then, but you can always contribute to the Blue Line family in other ways.
Right. I think that's fantastic. I think that's cool. I would assume that things kind of just mellowed out a little bit during COVID, but now that things are getting back on track, you're able to just kind of charge forward, huh?
Absolutely. And also the more we get back to in person, the more I'll be going around to different departments and teaching. And I have a rookie school I'll be talking to very soon about this kind of stuff. So things are happening, and with each project, with each video, someone is being helped. And if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, believe me, I am too, and I can help you through it.
That's so cool. Very cool. So Scott, thanks for coming on. I want to let everybody know that you can find the What's a Hero podcast on Twitter. We're on Instagram at the What's a Hero podcast, and you can find us on Facebook. Obviously, everybody's on Facebook, I think. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. And with that being said, I think that you can also find us on on my website. It's www.thewhatsaheropodcast.buzzsprout.com. So just go there. You can see every prior episode that we've had. You can also go. It'll take you to links for every podcast platform that we're on, and you can click on there. So you're an Apple iTunes, or it's not even Apple iTunes anymore. It's Apple Podcasts is what it's called, I think. And you say that's what you listen to us on. You can go right there, click on that, find the episode you want to listen to, and or you can listen to all of them. Just link it up to say, hey, I want to keep downloading. And downloads are great for us too. Lets us know who all is listening. But if you don't want to download, you want to just listen to it, while you're at your office and you have Wi-Fi or whatever, you can go right there from our website and listen to every episode that way as well. So Scott, do you have any final words of wisdom you'd like to share with the group?
be grateful for what we have. I know times are tough, but there's still something you can find that's positive in your life. Heck, the fact that you're listening to this podcast means that you have hearing. there's always something positive. And also remember, when you go through challenges, you can either let them destroy you or you can let them build you up. Make that commitment for yourself and for your family so that you can become stronger through challenges. If you are out there active in this, be careful. My gosh, keep your head on a swivel and don't ever get complacent. And if you're thinking about getting out of it because the stress is just too much, then make a calculated decision that works for you and your family. And yeah, life's going to be tough. That's just the way life is. But do your best to become stronger because of the challenges.
Right. Hey man, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. It's been awesome having you, and I look forward to hearing more about what's going on with you, and maybe in the future we can take a look at your other book, and I'll look forward to reading your third book that comes out, and obviously watching all your YouTube stuff. So that'd be cool.
Awesome. Well, it's been an honor, Ken. Thank you.
So for Scott Medlin, I have been Ken Fraunfelter, and this has been the What's a Hero podcast. We are clear.